So I love this. Each video is getting into more and more malignant arrhythmias and more interesting ones. So the first one was all the boring arrhythmias like tachycardia, bradycardia, escape beats, all that stuff. Not really too exciting, kind of boring, but anyone can really have them. They're normal. But now we're going over to the more exciting ones, the ectopic arrhythmias. Ectopic arrhythmias. These ectopic means it's okay. So ectopic means it's pretty much it's kind of like an escape beat, but it's a sustained escape beat, which means the SA note isn't the pacemaker of the heart anymore. So now the pacemaker is the atrial pacemaker. It's still there's still a P wave because the atrium are still contracting, but the SA note is no longer the pacemaker. So now pretty much the atria is the pacemaker, or the SA node is not the pacemaker anymore. It failed, so now the pacemaker is the atrial pacemaker. So that's what it means. Now, to go over really fast, we'll clear this. Whenever you look at an arrhythmia, you can tell what it is. You always want to define 4 things of arrhythmia. You can, based on these 4 things, you can tell if it originated in the atria or if it originated in the ventricles. And based on this, you can tell there's certain different arrhythmias that do this. And you also look at the pattern to see if it's the rhythm and whatnot. And you can also look at the ratio of P waves, the Qrs complex. So those are the things you always want to look at. But pretty much the first thing you want to look at when you look at an EKG or a rhythm strip, we'll say that. Because if it's a 12 lead, it's probably not going to have an arrhythmia. So first you will look to see if there's a presence of a P wave. If a P wave is there, you know it must be originating within the atria. Because if there's a P wave, that means the atrium is contracting. So it must have been originating in the atrium. That's tachycardia, bradycardia, other ones we're about to go over. If there's no P wave, that means that the atrium are contracting. It's the ventricles. And we'll go over all the ventricle arrhythmias later. Those are the really exciting ones that are fun to learn about. Also very dangerous, but exciting. And those don't have a P wave because they originate within the ventricles. Next, you want to look at the Qrs complex. And basically what you want to look at is the size of the Qrs complex. It should be narrow. If you remember looking at all the normal pictures where it's looks like this. You have okay, that's pretty wide. Where you have a narrow Qrs like that. That's normal. Now in ventricular arrhythmias, the Qrs looks like this. It's very wide. You'll notice it. A lot of these arrhythmias you can't really miss. So it's very, very wide. And the criteria is above 0.21 seconds or 3 boxes. Each box is 0.04 seconds. So above 3 boxes. That's the criteria. And also you want to look at the ratio of P waves to Qrs. It should be a 1-to-1 ratio. If the atrium is contracting, the Qrs, the ventricles are contracting right after it. And also you want to look at the arrhythmia. Yeah, so you want to look at the rhythm. So those are, and also the ratio of P waves to Qrs complex and the rhythm. The rhythm is the most common, obvious. You look at the rhythm to see if there's arrhythmia. But you also look at the presence of P waves in the Qrs complex. But now we can actually define the ectopic arrhythmias. Or they're called ectopic arrhythmias, which means the SA node is no longer the pacemaker, it's the atrial pacemaker. Now these are sustained beats. Now these can be, the 2 good ones are the premature beats. There's a, oh, I don't have it written down, wow. But there's 2 premature beats. There's a premature, how do I know? Oh, I do have it written down. Sorry. There's an atrial premature beat, and there's a junctional premature beat. Now, a premature beat means what it just says, it occurs prematurely. Now, you can tell in a rhythm strip what's like this. That's a rhythm right there, but you can pretty much tell the rhythm, whatnot. Now, a premature beat occurs before it should, prematurely. So going like this, say like this, then you would have like a beat right here. And it's a very bad drawing, it's not a picture. But that would be a premature beat. Atrial premature beat means there's a P wave. It originated within the atria. Junctional premature beat means there's no P wave. It's very simple. When I have better pictures, I'll make a video of all examples of these arrhythmias so you can actually see them all. Now the next arrhythmia is called PSVT, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. Paroxysmal means it occurs randomly. Supraventricular means it's above the ventricles. Tachycardia means tachycardia, fast heart rate. Now this is essentially tachycardia, but the difference is this occurs randomly. Whereas tachycardia occurs like on the onset of exercise, or you're excited, or you're fearful. PSVT occurs randomly. So you can have a normal whatnot, and all of a sudden you just have, okay, I can't even attempt to draw that. And all of a sudden you have prematurely, it just randomly occurs. So that would be PSVT. So it just randomly occurs. That's mostly caused by caffeine, massive caffeine ingestion, massive alcohol ingestion. So you just have your heart all of a sudden randomly beat extremely fast. This beats at a pulse of 150 to 250 beats per minute. Just beats really fast. Now another one is you have called atrial flutter. No. So atrial flutter. Atrial flutter is when it's called a sawtooth pattern. Usually that means you have more, the ratio of P waves, the Qrs complex is not 1-to-1. So you can have 2 P waves to 1 Qrs complex. So look at this. Normally it could be P wave, QRS. P wave, P wave, P wave, QRS. The ratio is off. It's called the sawtooth pattern because that's what it looks like, sawtooth. You'll recognize it when you see an EKG. So you're having many P waves. So what how this is what leads to this is normally the SA or the atrial node, whatever, pacemaker, conducts one action potential. Well, in this case, the node is going crazy. It's conducting many action potentials extremely fast. And if you remember from the AV node where it stops it for 0.1 seconds to let blood flow into the ventricles. Well, in this case, the AV node can't stop all those impulses. So that's why there's a certain ratio. It stops maybe 3, but say it lets 1 go by, so you have one ventricular QRS complex to 3 atrial impulses, so 3 P waves. A certain ratio, sawtooth pattern. And this can beat between 250 beats per minute to 350. Now you'll see these numbers and you'll be like, oh wait, I thought 220 minus age was your max heart rate. And that is true, but these are arrhythmias. They're beating extremely fast. Again, that means the P wave is beating between 350 beats per minute. Because remember, the pacemaker is going crazy and it's sending all these impulses, and it's beating extremely fast. So it's not really normal. And then you have something called AFib or atrial fibrillation. Fibrillation means quivering, so it's quivering extremely fast. Quivering does not mean contraction. If it's quivering, that just means the chamber is going crazy. It's vibrating like crazy. Up to 500 beats per minute. That is pretty fast. So up to 500 beats per minute. It's just quivering. It's not really beating and contracting. So what this looks like is complete chaos in the P waves. And then you have a normal QRS. Complete chaos, normal QRS. You'll definitely recognize this when you see a diagram of it. AFib. This is caused by something called a reentry circuit. What a reentry circuit is, it's like, you know how you normally conduct an action potential? Well, a reentry circuit is the electrical signal gets stuck in the atrium. So it like goes like this. And then it goes like that. So it like backs up many times and causes the atrial to quiver. The muscle has no idea what the hell it's doing. So it quivers extremely fast. So that's what AFib is. So it's just defined as complete chaos in the atrial. And since the atrium aren't really, they're fibrillating, they're not really contracting, it's compromising cardiac output. And this is when arrhythmias start to get extremely bad. Arrhythmias start getting malignant when they compromise cardiac output, which means they decrease blood flow. So since the atrium are just fibrillating, they're not contracting, they're not pushing blood down to the ventricles. If they're not pushing blood to the ventricles, you're pumping out less blood. Your stroke volume is weaker. If your stroke volume is weaker, your cardiac output's weaker, and eventually that's going to compromise blood flow to the body. You get lightheaded. It's not good. It can compromise exercise, all that stuff. So it's fibrillating. Now another one is called MAT, Multifocal Atrial Tachycardia. I really don't have a definition for this. This is just a random irregular rhythm. And what you would do is you just look for irregular P waves. I'll have to show a picture of this. I really don't have a definition for this. This is kind of stupid arrhythmia. This is just a regular P waves. And you also have something called wandering pacemaker. This is a regular P waves, but below 100. So we'll very quickly go over all of them. You have the 2 premature beats. So 2 premature. You have the atrial premature and the junctional premature. It just means they occur prematurely than you think. You would recognize them definitely on EKG because it occurs before you think it would occur. She'll give you a rhythm strip and it occurs before you think it. Atrial means it has a P wave. So a P wave is there. This means there's no P wave because it's junctional. Junctional means below the atrium. The AV node is beating. Then you have we'll call it a flutter, atrial flutter. Not as bad as AFib, but so it's a sawtooth pattern. You also have one called PSVT, which is normally caused by high alcohol ingestion. So you all of a sudden out of nowhere your heart starts beating extremely fast. And then you have AFib. It's actually a pretty common condition, AFib. It's caused by reentry circuit or the electrical signal just chilling out in the atrium. So what it does is causes it to quiver up to 500 beats per minute. It's just quivering. And since it's quivering, there's no contraction. If there's no contraction, it compromises cardiac output. If it compromises cardiac output, it decreases your quality of living and whatnot. And then you also have MAT, it's just irregular P waves. And you also have wandering pacemaker, which is pretty stupid. It's just regular P waves is below 100 beats per minute. I'll show you pictures going over all of these. So these are considered ectopic rhythms. So the SA node is no longer beating. A different node is beating for all of these arrhythmias. Now, some of these can consider benign, like premature beats can be benign. Now, if they occur like randomly, just out of nowhere, they can be benign, but it can be also malignant. Because that just means your heart is beating before it should. A flutter can be also benign, malignant, whatever. PSVT is definitely benign. It just means you drink a lot of alcohol, caffeine. AFib definitely can be malignant because it can compromise. I mean, I don't think anyone died from AFib, but it does compromise your cardiac output and lowers your quality of life, and it's uncomfortable because you're decreasing, because your P wave is going, your atrium is going crazy. So those are the ectopic arrhythmias.